Welcome to City on a Hill King's Church Online.
I'm Laura.
And I'm Jimmy.
Today we're going to be looking at how David wanted to build a house for God.
But that will be after a time of worship.
From Japan to Milan to Uzbekistan, all across the world, Jesus is the King. From Queensland to Greenland, way down in New Zealand, all across the world, Jesus is the King. Do you not know? Have you not heard? My God made the universe. Na 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 na. Have you not heard? Do you not know? He's the truth, the life, the only way to go. Na 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 na. From Japan to Milan to Uzbekistan, all across the world, Jesus is the King. From Queensland to Greenland, way down in New Zealand, all across the world, Jesus is the King. Do you not know? Have you not heard? My God made the universe. Na 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 na. Have you not heard? Do you not know? He's the truth, the life, the only way to go. Na 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 na. I said, hey, what? Jesus is the King. Oh yeah. I said, hey, what? Jesus is the King. Oh yeah. From Japan to Milan to Uzbekistan, all across the world, Jesus is the King. From Queensland to Greenland, way down in New Zealand,
all across the world.
Jesus is the King. From Queensland to Greenland, way down in New Zealand, all across the world, Jesus is. From Japan to Milan to Uzbekistan, all across the world, Jesus is the King. From Queensland to Greenland, way down in New Zealand, all across the world, Jesus is the King.
Last time we spoke about how David, he was king by this time, how David brought the Ark of the Covenant to Jerusalem. And we said that the Ark of the Covenant lived in a special tent. So David had a discussion with the prophet of the day, Nathan. He said to him, "Look, I am king, and I live in a big, beautiful house made of expensive wood, cedar, and the Ark of the Covenant, where God lives, is in a tent. Imagine that! He lives in a tent!" So David told Nathan that he had decided that he was going to build a house, a beautiful house for the Ark of the Covenant where God lives. And Nathan thought that was a good idea and said to him that he should go ahead. However, that night when Nathan was asleep, God spoke to him in a dream. And he said to him that nobody had ever thought of building a house for him. Nobody had ever thought of building a house for the Ark of the Covenant. Neither had he asked anybody to build a house for him. But David had thought of that. And he told Nathan that he should go and tell David that David, wasn't going to be the person to build this house, but that his son would do that. And that since David could think of such a thing, that he was going to make a promise to him. And this is the promise. God said to David that because he had thought of this, that his descendants will always be king of Israel. His descendants will always be on the throne. And if they did anything wrong, that he would discipline them. he would not leave them like how he left Saul. Remember? When Saul did something wrong, God left him. He wasn't going to do that. He would not leave any of the kings, any of the descendants of David that does wrong, but he would discipline them. And that his kingdom will be established forever. You know, that's exactly what has happened. The last of King David's descendants on the throne is the person whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom. His kingdom has no end. Who is this? It's King Jesus. And that's the end of the story.
Hello everybody! Wow, so King Jesus is going to be king forever. That's good news, isn't it? Do you know what? In my house, I have loads of portraits of our late queen. I expect you do too. Look, here's one on a 2p, where that's quite a recent one. Here's one on a 20p. Do you know what? This is from 1982, so she looks really young and beautiful. I don't know if you can see her there. Here's another one on a stamp. And do you know what? Just like King David was, the Queen, she was a great monarch. She was a godly person, but you know, she didn't live forever. Only King Jesus is going to be king forever. So look, I've made us some King Jesus stamps and I've turned them into bunting. So I'm going to show you how to make these stamps. So what you'll need is 2 pieces of white A4 and a piece of coloured. And what we're going to start by doing is take our first piece of white and we'll fold it into 4. So we'll fold it in half one way and then fold it in half the other way. And then we're going to cut all the way around in like a ziggy-zaggy pattern. And if you've got special scissors called pinking shears, they'll do this for you. But if you're like me, you don't, and you have to keep cutting all the way around until eventually it'll be like this, and you'll have 4 pieces of paper that have this nice zigzag down the edge, like a stamp. Then, next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our coloured piece, and again, we'll fold it into 4. But this time, we want a straight edge, but we need it to be slightly smaller. Yeah, so the coloured bit, it's a little bit smaller than the ziggy-zaggy white bit. So we'll just cut off a strip down each edge. Goodness, the wind. And then these will be ready, to layer up like this, and you can decide how much of a zigzaggy edge you want at the edge. So the next thing we're going to do, perhaps the most important part, is we need to make our picture of Jesus. So we have a portrait in what's called profile of the monarch on our stamps here in the UK. And so I'm going to show you how to draw Jesus in profile. But first we need the right size of piece of paper. So this time, take another piece of white A4. That's the size of your stamp. So fold it in half one more time. Okay, so if you draw Jesus on this space, he's going to come out the right size for your stamp. So you're actually going to end up with 8 little profiles of Jesus. But I'm going to draw him in big because this is quite tricky actually. I found this quite difficult. I've had to practice this. So I'll draw him in big and then we'll draw one in small as well. So if you start to draw your side-on picture of Jesus by kind of doing a swoop over the top of the head, that's the easy part. Now, for the profile of the face, you can see, first of all, it comes in slightly because of the part of the world he comes from. Jesus is wearing one of these kind of like a scarf on his head. You know, like if you're a shepherd in a nativity play, you put a tea towel on your head. So we come in slightly, then we come down for his forehead, and then we come in again just for where the bridge of his nose. Come down and around for the nose, then in down for the mouth, and then out for his beard, and then in for the neck and down kind of towards the chest. And then obviously the back of his head wouldn't just stop there, so we'll come down the back where the back of his headscarf would come. Okay, so this is what we call a profile of Jesus. So we'll come back to that in a minute to fill in the details. But first of all, I'm just going to draw and make it out again small. So on this size of paper, so we come round for the swoop round the top of the head. We come in where the headscarf would come in, down his forehead, in at the bridge of the nose, down for his nose, in for the mouth, and then round for the beard, then down and round for the neck, and down to the chest, and then the headscarf at the back. Okay, so you have a shape a bit like this. And then what we're going to do is cut that out so that then you've got it, that should kind of join up like this. Then you've got it, and you'll have 8 of them actually ready to make your stamps. So here are some that I've cut out. Okay, you can see we've got this same shape. Now the next thing that we're going to do is draw in some details. And if you have a look here, you can see that the background of my stamp is green. So I've drawn in all the details in green, because if we look at the real stamp, that's what it's like. The details in the picture are the same colour as the background. So this time I'm using a purple background, so I'm going to draw my details in purple. And again, I'll just show them on here first. So the first thing I'm going to do is draw in the headscarf. So it comes round, kind of round the head, and then it would come down at the side. Okay, so here's our headscarf. And what you might want is to have this band a little thicker. Okay, because this is the band that's kind of coming round his head to hold the scarf on. Next, we'll draw in his eyebrow. There we go. And we'll draw his eye. So for the eye, you want a kind of curve that would be like the front of the eye, and then just come underneath for the bottom part of his eye. Then we'll draw in where his nose would be, and we'll have his moustache coming down from under his nose and joining onto his beard. Okay, so we'll colour in all that bit. Oops, that was a bit scribbly. For his beard and his moustache, put in his mouth. There we go. And then you might want a few swoops down just to show the fabric of the scarf coming down. What you want to do is keep it quite simple. Don't put in too many details, because that way it's going to be easy to make them all identical. So let's just do it one more time on this little Jesus here. So we'll swoop round for the top of the headscarf. We'll draw in where the edge of that would go. Put a few bits of fabric there. Then we'll draw in his eyebrow and his eye. Come around the bottom of the nose, put in the moustache and the beard coming down. Oops. There we are, and put in his mouth. Oops, he looks a bit grumpy. There we are, let's give him a smiley face. Oh, and I'll just put in the top of his robe that we can see there as well. Okay, so here we have our little Jesus. So now all we have to do is put our stamp together. So we'll get one of our backgrounds, we'll get one of our coloured pieces, and we'll stick that on. Oops, making sure it goes in the middle. Then we'll take our Jesus profile and we'll stick him on. Make sure I get him nice and straight. And then the last thing that we're going to do is there's usually some writing on a stamp. This one says second because this was a second class stamp. Now I think with Jesus we want it always to be a first class. So I've got my white crayon which writes over coloured paper quite well. And there we are, I've written in first. And then I wrote along the bottom, King Forever. because this reminds me that Jesus is king forever. He was king way back then, he's king right now, this minute as you're watching, and he will be king into the future forever. So there we have it, a King Jesus stamp. So then, because I made several at once, I decided to turn them into bunting. So I just took this old bootlace, which as you may remember last week, I used to measure my head for my crown. And just make sure that you've got your stamps all the same way up. And then you can put a little bit of sellotape. And there we have it. And what I think might look quite good is if you made 2 colours of stamps and you could have them going alternate all the way along. Or you could just make lots of stamps and send them to different people to remind them that Jesus is king forever. Or I'm sure you'll come up with all sorts of ideas. But it's a good way for us to round off our David series by reminding ourselves that David was the great grandfather of Jesus, the great king, who's still king today. Well, I hope you enjoy making some stamps, and I will be back next week for our new series with a new craft. I'll see you then. Bye.
Do you know what, Lola?
What?
It seemed to me like David was really annoyed that him, as king, was living in a lavish, expensive house, and the Ark of the Covenant was living in a tent.
Yeah, but it's a good thing that he did something about it.
Yeah, that's right.
Jamie, do you know what I found so interesting in the story?
What?
That at the end of today's story, it said that one of David's descendants is still king today. And I thought to myself, who is this? And guess who it is? Jesus. And I said, oh.
That's right. Oh, indeed.
That's it for this week.
Till next time, bye.